Hello, everyone. Welcome wherever you're joining from the world. My name is Julie Ward, and I'm representing the European Libraries and Archives Network special expert working group on libraries for the planet. This webinar is the third webinar in a series that our expert working group is promoting, bringing together different aspects around libraries and sustainability. This webinar is all about growing new ideas about climate and sustainability, looking at libraries leading beyond the sector. I am a former member of the European Parliament, during which time I was Vice Chair of the Parliament's Culture and Education Committee. Since 2020, I've been a volunteer organiser with Culture Declares Emergency. It's an international social movement that supports the arts, culture and heritage sector, encouraging the use of creativity as a tool to raise awareness of the climate and ecological emergency, and also to take action. I'm also a board member of Festival of Thrift, which is the UK's #1 Festival of Sustainability, and I'm a member of the Civil Society Forum's Environment Working Group. Last year, I was recruited to this expert group, and so I've had the pleasure of organising the speakers for this webinar. Over the next hour and 20 minutes or so, we will be looking at how libraries and literature can take a lead in helping to push the boundaries in the climate and sustainability field, particularly with regard to public engagement. The webinar provides a platform for 4 inspirational and innovative projects that are working outside old established frameworks of how libraries are perceived, making links between arts and climate activism, climate literacy, and political processes, well-being, and climate hope. The webinar supports the promotion of EU green competences, particularly in the following areas: embodying sustainability values, embracing complexity in sustainability, envisioning sustainable futures, acting for sustainability. The 4 presentations will be followed by a 10 to 15-minute Q&A, whereby the presenters will answer some of your questions. We have a Q&A facility in this webinar. Some of the questions may be answered in the process of the webinar. At the end of the Q&A, we'll wrap up with a short concluding statement about climate hope from each of the presenters. Links to useful resources will be provided for participants. I'm briefly going to introduce each of our 5 speakers, and then we'll get started with their presentations. I'm really pleased to have Judith Musker-Turner with us. She's a published poet and textile artist who has exhibited internationally. Since last September, she has been Climate Action Programme Lead for the culture sector in Wales, based at the National Library of Wales. We also have Elise Tijthof. She's the founder of International ChildPress, a child rights and youth media organisation based in the Netherlands and Norway. And also from International ChildPress, we have Chace Olsen. He's a ChildPress reporter based in New York, USA. He focuses on civic leadership and youth engagement. And this year, he will begin studying political science at Princeton University. Also with us is Adam Cooper, who's actually physically quite close to me. He's here in the northeast of England. He's a member of Culture Declares Emergency, which is the social movement I mentioned earlier. And he's director of the climate hope organisation Threads in the Ground, unearthing powerful climate stories to help more people be good ancestors. And finally, we'll have Beate Hovind, who is an urban developer, curator, cultural producer, and associate professor at Oslo Met, known for her work initiating ambitious, long-term, site-specific projects that connect storytelling, place, and community. And she is the curator and chair of the Future Library Trust, Norway. So that's all our speakers. I'm going to ask Judith to take the floor first. Each of our speakers has about up to 15 minutes. They may not use all that time, but they'll be giving some really interesting presentations. So Judith, the floor is yours.
My name is Judith Musker-Turner, and I'm the Climate Action Programme Lead at the National Library of Wales. I'm honoured to have been invited to take part in this webinar today alongside colleagues from such inspiring organisations and projects. Thank you very much for the invitation. In this presentation, I'm going to take you on a journey from Wales's overall approach to sustainable development to the actions that the library is taking to address the climate and nature emergencies, and talk about how long-term futures thinking is at the heart of both of these. In 2015, the Welsh Government passed the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. This groundbreaking piece of legislation places a legally binding duty on 52 public bodies in Wales, including national government, local health boards, and other specified public bodies, including the National Library of Wales, to improve the social, economic, environmental, and cultural well-being of Wales. Public bodies must do this by contributing towards 7 well-being goals and by considering the needs of future generations alongside those of current generations in every decision they make. The 7 well-being goals are a translation of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals into a Welsh context. You can see them on the screen there. A prosperous Wales, a resilient Wales, a healthier Wales, a more equal Wales, a Wales of cohesive communities, a globally responsible Wales, and a Wales of vibrant culture and thriving Welsh language. This last wellbeing goal around culture and Welsh language is perhaps the most unique aspect of the Act. The Act recognises cultural wellbeing as the 4th pillar of sustainability, alongside the traditional pillars of economic, social, and environmental wellbeing. We are the first nation in the world to do this. In contrast, culture is notably missing from the Sustainable Development Goals. It's often been referred to as the missing pillar. And more nations, regions, and cities across the world are now looking to follow Wales's example and have culture as a global goal by 2030. The obligation for all public bodies to consider their impact on culture and the Welsh language presents many exciting opportunities for the culture sector and for libraries in Wales, because it puts culture on the table in all policy areas and leads to more cross-sectoral collaboration. Changing the way that public bodies work is part of the legislation itself. Alongside the 7 wellbeing goals, the Act includes 5 ways of working: collaboration, integration, involvement, long-term, and prevention. These ways of working are the most fundamental part of the Act, as the wellbeing goals can only be achieved by changing how we work to get us out of short-term thinking and a narrow focus into a more long-term, holistic, and interconnected approach. When the Act was passed in 2015, the United Nations said, "What Wales is doing today, the world will do tomorrow." Almost a decade later, at the Summit for the Future in September 2024, the UN adopted a Declaration on Future Generations. The Future Generations Commissioner for Wales has worked closely with the United Nations to guide a global approach to future generations. And this declaration is a critical outcome of that ongoing collaboration. The Wellbeing of Future Generations Act underpins Welsh Government's approach to sustainable development across all policy areas. In relation to environmental sustainability, Welsh Government declared a climate emergency in 2019 and has set targets for the public sector to be collectively net zero by 2030 and for Wales to be net zero by 2050. The current programme for government includes commitments to embed their response to the climate and nature emergency in everything they do, to build a stronger, greener economy whilst progressing towards decarbonisation, and to enable Wales's cultural industries to thrive. In support of this commitment, Welsh Government have developed the priorities for culture, which includes the ambition that the culture sector demonstrates leadership and collaboration in tackling the climate and nature emergencies and embedding sustainable development. There are a range of Welsh Government legislation, strategies and plans which interconnect with this ambition, which I won't go through, but I'll just highlight that both the impact of climate change on culture and culture's role in tackling the climate and nature emergencies is considered within these strategies. So, for example, Wales's climate adaptation strategy recognises both the climate-related risk to culture and the historic environment, and the power of culture to engage people with climate action. So how does this legislative and policy context translate into action on the ground in Wales, and how the library approaches sustainable development? The National Library of Wales, located in Aberystwyth, is one of 6 legal deposit libraries in the United Kingdom, the others being the British Library, the National Library of Scotland, Trinity College Dublin, the Bodleian Library in Oxford, and the Cambridge University Library. The library is an important institution for Wales, and the building is certainly one of Wales's iconic buildings. The building is Grade 2 star listed, and as you can imagine, this creates additional challenges when working in the library. The library is actually a collection of buildings, the first building being opened to the public in 1916, followed by a series of subsequent developments which you can see listed there, with the most recent being the 3rd library building, which was completed in 1995. The National Library is a very living building. It's open to the public and it hosts visitors, researchers, exhibitions, and many events. It is also home to the collections, so any work done on the building must be done in a way that does not endanger the staff, users, and the collections, and allows the library's operations to continue safely. In 2020, Mark Stevens was appointed as Head of Estates. Mark was a man with a vision, and he persuaded the library to set an objective to eliminate fossil fuel from the site by 2028, not reduce, eliminate fossil fuel use altogether. This was an ambitious vision, as historic buildings like the library are heavy users of energy, gas for heating and electricity for ventilation to keep the collections at acceptable climate levels. They rely on old, outdated heating systems with poor insulation and face severe restrictions on upgrades. These systems are often ignored in national decarbonisation strategies. You can't rip out heating systems or insulate walls like you could in a modern building. Each step requires careful discussion with planners, conservation officers from CADU, the Welsh Government's Historic Environment Service, the County Council, and the building fabric itself. Ambitious environmental action is often driven by passionate individuals with a future-focused vision like Mark. But being able to call upon our obligations under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and Welsh Government's goal for a net zero public sector are really powerful drivers when you're making the case to senior leaders to commit to an ambitious target, like our target to be fossil fuel free by 2028. It would take an entire presentation to talk through all the decarbonisation work that we've done since Mark came into post, but in short, we are on track to meet our 2028 goal. I'll give you a very quick tour of the headlines. So in 2022, Darnton B3 was appointed to develop ideas on how to reach the goal, and the priority was a programme of building fabric improvements for Grade 2 listed buildings. Before we could switch to low carbon systems, we had to look at the building fabric, making sure we weren't losing heat faster than we could officially generate it. We commissioned a thermal imaging report which showed us that the roof and windows needed insulation improvements. We then set about insulating the roof using natural insulation and local suppliers. We worked with builders from Aberystwyth and slate from Blaenau Ffestiniog. We also used the re-roofing opportunity to work with local company Will Davey to put nearly 800 photovoltaic panels on the roof, which was complicated due to the planning restrictions on our listed building. We also took advantage of the scaffolding being up to improve the windows and install internal glazing, working with a local supplier in Newport who was able to provide aluminium windows, which met the planning restrictions on the colour and type of windows we were allowed to install. And then another phase of the decarbonisation work, which is still ongoing, is replacing our 7 gas boilers with 10 air source heat pumps and installing ground source heat pumps in a field that we own on our site, which is down in the right-hand corner of that image. 52 boreholes have been installed in the field, each approximately 140 metres deep, with a design output of 400 kilowatts. And then in recent months, photovoltaic panels have been installed over the holes. In addition to this, in 2024, the car park needed to be retarmacked, so we used the opportunity to provide 40 electric car charging points as part of this infrastructure. At the time, we were the biggest electric charging car park in Wales, and the EV rally drops by every year. We anticipate a 50% reduction in the library's annual CO2 emissions by 2028. This equates to saving about £93,000 per year. But it's not just about the carbon, it protects the future. We've designed the systems to adapt as new technology matures. For example, as battery storage improves or grid decarbonisation accelerates, the library systems can be upgraded or integrated with these innovations without major overhaul. This isn't just a one-time retrofit, it's an evolving system that will continue to improve over the coming decades. Doing this work has placed the National Library at the forefront of encouraging others to decarbonise historic buildings. Other listed buildings can achieve this. It proves that sustainability and heritage conservation can go hand in hand, and being free of fossil fuel energy is achievable even in the most challenging environments. In 2025, we launched our new strategic plan, Connecting Wales with the World, to coincide with the publication of Welsh Government's priorities for culture. We collaborated with Welsh Government and partners across Wales in developing these priorities, and they've been at the heart of shaping the library's strategic plan, including the priority that culture is resilient and sustainable, and the ambition to demonstrate leadership and collaboration in tackling the climate and nature emergencies. Alongside the priorities for culture, the Welsh Government published a research report with a set of recommendations for progressing the culture sector's response to the climate and nature emergencies. We have offered to lead delivery of these recommendations through establishing a climate action programme of sector development activities and a climate action programme lead post, which is where I came in. I came into post as the climate action programme lead 6 months ago, and since then, I've met with stakeholders from across the culture sector to assess what support is needed and gather examples of good practice. We've organised a delegation from Wales to the Climate Resilience and Culture Sector Conference at the British Library with the aim of increasing Welsh engagement with major sector events. We've run 2 pilot events for a Culture and Climate Cymru network, which is a new initiative to bring together stakeholders from across all parts of the culture and historic environment sector in Wales to collaborate and share learning. We've commissioned a new Culture and Climate Cymru website as a central platform for the culture sector to find information, events and training on climate and nature. We've also commissioned sustainability charity Cynnal Cymru to carry out research into what climate training is currently available to people working in the culture sector and to deliver interventions to improve the take-up of training and upskilling activities. And we've also commissioned a decarbonisation pilot for 3 cultural sector organisations based in listed buildings in Wales, Mostyn Gallery, the Park and Dare Theatre and Haverhub CIC, which will also provide case studies and learning for other cultural sector organisations, as well as benefits to these buildings themselves. Moving forwards, I'm also planning to work with staff across the library to ensure that everyone feels that climate action is relevant to their role and that action is integrated across all areas of the library's work. From the huge opportunities to engage with climate and nature stories through our collections, to our role in promoting information literacy and tackling misinformation, to supporting staff wellbeing through carrying out mindfulness-based biodiversity surveying activities in our historic gardens in collaboration with National Museum Wales. Aberystwyth has recently received UNESCO City of Literature designation, with the first UNESCO Creative City in Wales. The National Library of Wales was a partner in the bid and will be a partner throughout delivery. One of the 6 headline projects is Reading Landscapes, harnessing culture, language, and literature to help us understand, bear witness, and increase community resilience in a period of environmental crisis. Our work through this programme will also contribute to our climate leadership. I'll stop there, but what I've tried to convey in this presentation is this chain of influence from the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act through to the National Library of Wales's ambition to be a sector leader on sustainable development, and the actions that we're taking to deliver on that ambition. I think it's a great example of how forward-thinking policy at a national level can support individuals with a vision like Mark Stevens to raise the level of ambition at an organisational level, which is now leading on to benefits for the wider culture sector in Wales and beyond. Diolch yn fawr, thank you.
Absolutely fantastic, Judith. I've been following the Welsh Government's amazing work on the Act for the Wellbeing of Future Generations. And I'd like to tell you that I added it to the Futures Library in Malmö University when I was there for Culture Action Europe's conference 2 years ago. And as a child rights campaigner, I think this is really important. That leads me on to our second presenter. So Elise Tijthof is the founder of International ChildPress. She's here with us. I think you're in Amsterdam right now, Elise, is this right? Yeah, okay. Because Elise's organisation is very focused on giving children and young people a voice, Elise is going to co-present with Chace Olsen, who is joining us from New York City. Okay, so the floor is yours, both of you. I don't know how you're going to do this, but you're very welcome.
To start, thank you so much, Julie, for having us here today and for being a part of this conversation, which is extremely important and with sustainability is sort of essential to the mission of ChildPress through uplifting youth voices. So like Julie said, my name is Chace Olsen. I am a senior editor and reporter at ChildPress International here in New York. I'm 17 years old. And really my goal and what Elise and ChildPress has helped me to do is to take what I've been seeing in my community when it comes to lack of resources for sustainability and lack of youth participation that we've been seeing in a lot of areas, I know especially in the United States, and uplift that voice through the platform of ChildPress. So I'm going to pass it on to Elise to tell you all a little bit more about herself and ChildPress.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy Chace is leading our presentation, as youngsters are so little recognized, I think, by their enormous capacity of making videos, interviewing, being eager to get a kind of revolution going. Chace has been mentioning this as a youth revolution, that in the world here now, there's a high need. And of course, he is in the US, also in a special situation, on getting the youngsters' voice heard. It's 1/3 of the world population who are young, and they're eager. There are many hours in schools, and I've been visiting Chace in New York, and I met him first in Norway, where he was very committed to the Nobel Peace Prize Center in finding a book about when those who listen can change the world. And that's very deep in the soul of Chace, but also many, many reporters. I will share our website later on, and you will see how many different reporters have been starting to be active for ChildPress. And as the youth revolution, Chace is leading from New York also in Europe. I call it an intellectual revolution, because children also and youngsters are very good in explaining basic principles as democracy. I've seen Chace, he took ChildPress directly to a primary school and a secondary school. He got a whole class active in deciding what kind of targets they have. And I will share it now, and I will show you what he, for example, did in New York. I'm going here to reporters and to New York. I hope you are, no, not Norway, sorry, Norway. That is, you see here in Norwegian, what is your case? And every child from class makes his own personal magazine. They do it in Canva. That's a really easy tool. But as as Giles Chace was doing in New York, is finding a class. He has done much more. He was interviewed by children in Arundel in front of the library, as we have had an office for years. And here, for example, in a school, he got them to mention what kind of issue they have, and that's education, democracy, it's climate, nature, and it's safety in every school. So so the children are mentioning their issue, and they're going to do street interviews. They are using ChatGPT to see more information, but without a library, it's no go that ChildPress reporters are taken serious, because only at the library you can be sure that you find trustworthy information. So then I will give the voice to Chace again for why he thinks that youth participation and climate is a key issue on getting children voices heard. Will you tell the next phase, Chace?
Of course. So, as Elise was saying, libraries play an essential role in giving youth and families, especially, the um, the information that they need, right? As youth, we see a lot that go on in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our countries, and we are not given credit for the amount of things we know. We're not as dumb or mindless as a lot of people think we are, and that we get credit for, especially teenagers and those in more of the primary schools, right? We see this going on in our communities. So, along with just the power of youth voice, right? Because at least here in the US and throughout the world, some of the most influential societal and governmental movements have been spearheaded from youth voice. And youth did not wait. They did it as they were in college, or as they were in high school or even primary school, advocating for the things that they want to do. And we really are in the midst of this global youth revolution. We've seen movements such as the climate movement, where people across the country, young people across the country, came together and are continuing to come together for Fridays for Future, for example, to fight for um, sustainability and and ethical um, and ethical journalism through ChildPress gives students like me the opportunity to really dig deeper, right? Through looking at things at the library, through utilizing other sources that, libraries really are essential, excuse me, um, are that source of information, to go ahead with that. And for a lot of youth out there, climate is a very nerve-wracking and a very central issue, because, as you all know, we are the future. We are the now, but we are also the future, and we are inheriting this world that unfortunately has been miscared for, and there's been lots of destruction. So when youth stand up and we are able to find resources and fight back when we're being questioned about uh, issues like climate, and to talk really about what the issue is, and what people other than youth, and reaching out to different politicians and different mayors and different people with power, and telling them this is what you can do, and journalism gives them that opportunity.
Exactly. And I've been piloting for many years, getting children involved in journalism, and it was really quite exciting to get them serious, so that adults really take them serious. And as I've been seeing that there are schools starting to have a youth board, but they have a press board that they have an editorial board that is quite exceptional, and in a way that they're working together. A lot of schools do have a school newspaper, but it's fun, and it's often depending of an active parent or one active teacher. So when the teacher leaves, the school newspaper stops. So what I found out is that there should be in every town hall a place where children can have dialogues and have a press room in the town hall where the mayor feels uh, responsible for its youth are getting through. And one, so that every school in the neighborhood of the area where the library is and also where the town hall is, that the school will be supported to have a youth board and an editorial board. So the role of libraries are very essential, as I was saying before, that is the place to find trustworthy information. We've been seeing, for example, in Arendal, in Norway, that still there was a reduction of budgets to libraries. So our position in having a press room in the mayor's council house, that should prevent that there's any budget loss for libraries. Libraries are so extremely essential. For me, it's impossible to run a news agency where children can be reporters without a very active role of the libraries. So all places where libraries are cut, this is a really important issue for children to showcase. We have done a lot of interviews in libraries, and children are explaining which books they think are important. And something I found out, which I was very happy to find out, is that when children say in the school library or in the library, can you please buy this book for me because I've seen it on the internet and I would love that it would be in our school library or in a public library, that adults will buy them. And I think that is kind of an access to information for children in school, that when they find a book which they think is interesting, which they maybe only have been reading digital or heard about it or having heard a review about this book, that they can go into a school library or the public library and say, I would love to have this book in your collection. So now Chace will say something more about his school library.
Yes. So my school library is pretty much a hub. I'm in one of the offices in the library now, but it's a hub for all the information, right? As young people, like I said before, there are a lot of things going on in the world, and it's hard to it's hard for people to really especially younger people, to understand a lot of these issues. And that's where the library comes into play. I know I've asked I asked my librarian to actually order some of the books from the Nobel Peace Center, specifically Those Who Listen Change the World. And it's been a space where I've been able to conduct um, dialogue discussions where we sit down and use a book and use these different materials, and from there we have a constructive conversation and dialogue onto, okay, we see this issue, right? Let's exchange information about it. I read this, I know this. And from there you really are able to defend your stance. And in a place where there may be positions for youth that seem like you have the power, right? Because that's a lot of the opportunities for youth. There are opportunities for youth to get involved in government and societal issues and take a place in that. But the issue is that a lot of the times it isn't followed through with, or the politician or mayor or whoever's running it might get suggestions from the youth, but maybe not actually use them or put them into place. But when we have stuff such as these dialogues where you can come together in the library and have these press rooms, it turns youth voice into something that is actually cared about and considered moving forward. I've always said this, but as youth, we are often told that we are the leaders of tomorrow. And while that is true, let that not be understated by the fact that we are also the leaders of today. And having a library where you can go to and having a space for you to gain information, reliable, credible information in this time of mass misinformation is essential to uplifting youth and student voices.
Thank you very much, Chace. And then I will go on again about the role of the library. Why I have initiated ChildPress is that my father was active as a local newspaper owner in Holland, and my mother was this in Norway, the second generation, and my father the fifth generation. So I felt very connected to access to information. And I saw that my family had a lot of newspapers, and we were very active in talking about politics and so on. And my father always said, you have the level of quality of information where you speak about on the dinner table. And as nowadays families are, of course, addicted to often fake news, and children are very insecure about what is fake news or not. And they really get upset, and that's very bad for their brains and their focus on what is important. That I felt responsible, kind of, what a local newspaper brings into the community, how quality the information is. And as I'm going up in the library now, we had a lovely interview in Norway with different library leaders who were all quoting that it's very important that libraries help. Of course, that's your big role, to give the population access. And here you see the map of the International Federation Libraries. And we need, I think, from libraries. Here there is a picture of the Arundel new library, but in a way I didn't succeed in it, to get enough budget to get all the UN reportages on. This is very close to the door. I would love that there is the quality information you need from the UN directly by the door. We in Arundel, we were so happy to have the United Environmental Program offices. The Norwegian government spent a lot of money in getting GREET. That's the Norwegian part of the United Nations Environmental Program. And I know personally the local people who were working there, who were making this IPCC reportage for 30 years ago. And we are often thinking, how should the situation be when the people writing on the IPCC reportage from all over the world, but also local persons, would be active in their local newspaper and will come on the dinner and kitchen tables at home. So I think that on the libraries, we are following, as I haven't been showing yet, we are following the UN days. So to have an international agenda where we work on. So the 24th of April, no, 22nd of April is Mother Earth Day. And there we hope that libraries will have international, national, and local, the best information which should be on the kitchen table, so that families can get active. And when we were preparing this, Chace remembered that I've been talking about the library I found in Deventer, which worked together with the council house, which there was also the last information, what can a family do to reduce the emission and all the other issues on plastic use. And we are mentioning that when a whole school says we don't want to buy some plastic, for example, or we only want to buy secondhand clothes, so that the children will bring this into the families. And so no way that we will buy new clothes, only secondhand clothes. Going up front to the 22nd of April, I would love that we will have examples of libraries and town halls where they bring this basic information on it, on this action. And I don't know how much time I have more. Maybe we are already there. Then I go on to the next phase already. Or Chace, do you want to say something more?
I'm going to cut you off there, Elise, because we already did 17 minutes, which it was fascinating, and I'm really grateful to have both of you.
Can I say one more thing, Julie?
Yeah, one more thing.
Very short. When you go to our website and you see librarians, we have started to make a prize for the best library. So to send in, so we would love that you would send in between now and the 22nd of April where you can set it up in on our website, how you have how different libraries around the world has got these international UN books and national good books and local film. It can be films and so on. So you see here our startup to make a prize for libraries, and then we hope that we find the best examples of local, national, and international important news following the different UN days. And as I was already asking you, for the 22nd of April, the Mother Earth Day, and the 23rd is the copyright day. So we will announce on the 23rd which library is the best in the world. Thank you, Judy. Sorry.
Okay, thank you so much. That's it's wonderful to have both of you here with us. I'm really grateful, Elise, that you brought Chace to be with us today. I have personal experience of ChildPress work in Arendal. If you've never been to Arendal, it's an amazing city in Norway, which has a democracy festival every summer, and ChildPress are absolutely key to the democracy festival, interviewing politicians, in fact, interviewing the Prime Minister, regardless of party. Every year they interview the Prime Minister and they get priority treatment by the Prime Minister. She waits to speak to the young people before going in to speak to the adult conference attendees. So yeah, so super important to have you here. And Chace, I really, really understand this sense of climate anxiety. I think your understanding of your role and responsibilities and what you need to do, your generation needs to do, is really relevant. So now I'm going to ask Adam Cooper to speak. I introduced Adam earlier. He's going to tell a little bit about himself and an amazing project, which I had the privilege to witness in person. Adam, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adam. I'm the director of Threads in the Ground. We're a charity based in the UK, in the northeast of the UK, and all of the work that we do is about helping more people to think and talk about climate change in playful and hopeful ways, which is interesting that it's something that Elise and Chace, something you've been talking about just then, is that oppressive anxiety weight, guilt weight that comes with thinking about climate. So all of our work is about trying to open up other emotional experiences of climate change and climate action to help people towards creative, expansive thinking about climate and going beyond that crushing, disabling anxiety. So a foundational idea of everything that we do at Threads in the Ground is this, I suppose, a provocation, this question that are you and I the most powerful, most privileged generation of humans that there will ever be? That one way of thinking about us as a species is that we have about 300,000 years of human history. And you and I, all of us in this call, we happen to be born now. Our consciousness happens to have landed in this moment, in this window during which that many leading experts in climate policy and infrastructure tell us that it is the policy and system and infrastructure changes that we make now within this window, now about 6-year window, that determines the future that all future humans will inherit. You can't play catch up after that window. There's a certain level of policy and system change has to happen within this moment. Now that I'm aware that can be a massively overwhelming idea, but it's also, we can choose for it to be an empowering one as well, because it means that no matter who we are in this moment, in this generation, when you think in deep time, when you think generationally, we are incredibly powerful, that the actions that we take or don't take, they echo and they ripple and they reverberate more so than any generation to have come before us or any who will come afterwards. So are we then the most powerful generation that will ever be? And if that's the case, if you accept that, then a guiding question should be, I think, how can we be good ancestors? That's the question that we ask a lot. Threads in the ground is, how can we be good ancestors? We ask that of ourselves and our participants and our audiences. So one of our answers to that is a project called Mushroom Sculpt, of course, which I'm going to talk through now. This is one of our answers to how can we be good ancestors. So please indulge me as I tell you a story. If we cast our minds back billions of years into the past and we zoom out our mind's eye up into the stratosphere and gaze down upon our planet, and we often, we talk about the pale blue dot and we picture our planet and it's green and it's, luscious and green. But that green on the land comes from all of our plant life. And of course, there was no plant life in the beginning. And for many billions of years, there was no plant life. And in fact, in the beginning, the first life on land, because all life was contained in the sea. If you can picture yourself standing on an ancient beach front billions of years ago, and there's this splash of the sea, a wave, and you can feel the drift of the water landing on your skin, and there's this one significant wave that casts up a pixel, a tiny brick, a tiny nugget of life from the sea, which is a spore, and which is fungus. So the first life on land was fungus. About 1400 million years ago, I think it is when fungus 1.4 billion years ago, when fungus, the first life, arrived on land. So this is a picture of an artist's rendering of a prototaxite, which they're about 24 feet high, higher than houses, early fungal life on land. And it was the fungus that arrived on land and started to unlock the land so that all of the life could follow. So we have this tiny brick that lands, and then it starts to spread through the dusty, craggy, dead ground that nothing else had managed to colonize before. And we can see here, we're all familiar with roots because you can see roots, but and of course over the last few years, I remember when we first started doing this work, it was much rarer for people to know what mycelium was, but now I say the word and people are going, not I know what mycelium is. But if you don't, it's the kind of if you think of a mushroom, the mushroom is just the fruit. It's the fruiting body of the fungus. The actual organism, the rest of it is these mycelial networks that they are thinner than the hairs on our head, and they're spread through the ground, through the soil all around us. And we are surrounded by mycelium. And because plants arrived 700 million years after fungus and have been around since then, plants and fungus have been in this dance beneath the soil for hundreds of millions of years, to the point that if you step outside now, wherever you might be in the world, and if you pulled up a plant and you follow its roots to the very ends, to the thinnest tips, it's incredibly hard to tell where the root ends and the mycelium network begins, because they are entwined in this dance of exchanging resources and information. We have mycelium at the bottom of our deepest ocean trenches. We have mycelium running through the tapestries in our old portrait galleries, and we have mycelium growing on the outside of the International Space Station as a deliberate experiment. It's not a weird accident. People get worried about that. I don't know why. So it's everywhere. It's all around us and crucial to our life. So what? Why am in a climate and libraries seminar talking about fungus? Well, one of the cool recent developments in the last few decades has been an emerging biomaterial that some of you may have come across, grown from fungus. So this thing that you're looking at here, this picture, is a sort of art plinth grown from a combination of waste agricultural product, hemp fibers and straw, and a sample of reishi that all of that has been added into a mold, and the fungus, the mycelium, has grown and bound all of that waste product together and created this material, which in the right conditions, it can be grown to be almost as strong as concrete. It's completely biodegradable. It's fire retardant. When I say biodegradable, it's compostable, not just biodegradable, home compostable. Just a really weird, really interesting material. So we use that in our Mushroom Sculpt project. We work with schools and community groups around the north of England to design and grow sculpture trails, outdoor compostable sculpture trails. So we work with children and community groups across the region, and we've done everything from, we've done all sorts of stuff, including this is a face, don't think it counts as a bust when it's the face, someone called a death mask of a local BBC radio presenter. We tend to be child-led in the work, so we follow the stories in them and the vision that comes out of from working with the children, even when it's weird, maybe especially when it's weird. These are like this is a piece called Human Fishington, which is a fish with human legs, and we borrowed some legs from some charity shop Barbie dolls to make these. They're awful. I don't like them. So we've worked around the Northeast, lots of different schools. We've been on national TV sharing this work. But the bit that I want to talk to you about is we created a project called the Mushroom Book Room. So we used waste cardboard from a local bookshop to create bookshelves for an installation. So the Mushroom Book Room, there is a bookshop near where I'm sitting right now called The Bound. And it's a really small, it's a small local bookshop. It's about, I want to say 7 to 10 meters squared, maybe. But every month they produce enough waste cardboard. They produce the equivalent waste of 2 rhinos of waste cardboard. I can't remember if it's 2 tons or 4 tons of waste cardboard, because their books are all shipped to them in single-use cardboard boxes. The act of opening the box destroys it. So we were chatting to the local bookshop. They said, "What could you do with all this cardboard and your weird fungus project?" And we said, "Well, let's make a bookshop or a library." So we did. We collected the cardboard, the tons of cardboard. We soaked it. We pasteurized it. We steamed it. And then we introduced a sample of the fungus that we want to work with. We ran community workshops around the region in different community spaces where we had people coming together, shredding the cardboard, because this is one of these things that you agree to do the project before you really think it through. You really think through, how am I going to hand shred 4 tons of cardboard? We'll do some workshops. We'll have children do it. So we shredded huge quantities of the cardboard and sawdust from a local furniture maker and other stuff, mixed it with the fungus and packed it into our molds, and grew our bookshelves, these modular bookshelves that are designed to stack on top of each other. And you can see here the white threads of growth binding together all that loose waste material that otherwise would go to industrial composting and pulping. So why do I have this slide? I think I just love the picture. Oh, because another thing that happened with these shelves. So some of the shelves we grew from a species called reishi, which is really strong and durable, and others we grew from oyster mushrooms. And I don't know if you can, well, you can see on the picture there me grinning like a maniac. And just next to my hand, you can see the shelves sprouted huge quantities of gourmet grey oyster mushrooms, which we had not planned for. So we collected the mushrooms, and I'll come back to these pictures. So we collected the mushrooms from the shelves, and then we worked with a local zero waste food cafe restaurant, the Magic Hat in Newcastle. And we hosted a tasting menu, an accessible tasting menu that I think it was 7 courses, all made from the mushrooms from our bookshelves. But this was, I so enjoyed this project, and still it's a year and a half since this installation of the shelves, of these kind of modular shelves on this modular frame. And still, when I'm at networking things and events, or even just meeting new people for the first time, it's so frequently that people I don't know start to tell me about this project and start to explain it to me and say, "Oh, and it was, this was what it was about," and telling their own version of the story of what this project was and about the material and the magic of it, which I'll come back to in some of the learning. Off the back of the project, we've been working with an artist. We're creating a book, a children's book, which is the story of mycelium, the story of fungus from the perspective of the fungus, and some of those beautiful stories of circularity and networkedness and non-human nature that are kind of bound up in the story of fungus. So we're developing a book. Watch this space. And I can't remember why I had this picture. This is the mycelium fairy castle, which is not to do with the project. I think we continue. The thing continues growing and developing and being shared around. And we've done everything from make mycelium Christmas decorations to vases, and you see these little baubles. We call them sporbles. So the project continues and lives on. And one of the ways it lives on, we created a bank of open source resources, I suppose in a way an online library of resources for how to bring this project at different scales into schools and community groups. So we've mapped the project to the UK school curriculum so that different key stage groups can apply it as a way into talking about climate that can start in different subjects in different parts of the curriculum. So my reflections on libraries and climate work and this project. Some of my reflections on this work on libraries, I suppose the point in this work, I made a really serious point about, are we the most powerful generation that's ever existed? And then start talking about mushrooms. And I guess the point is that we need this plethora, this range of emotional experience of climate. We need to be able to think and talk about these things with our complete emotional range. And where we are so often drawn into is the doom loop, is the doom spiral, is the isolating anxiety and depression and guilt and sense of smallness. So what we try and do is make different gateways into thinking and talking about climate, different ways, different emotional ways in. We try and make it weird and fun and wonderful and wonder-inducing in different ways. So of course, growing a book room from bookshop waste, it's an odd niche project, but it's just one example of when you can throw off the I don't know, maybe the repression of the seriousness that often comes with climate work, that of course we need it a lot of the time. But as a gateway in for many people to have more diversity in climate groups, we need more of the oddness and the weirdness that things like mushrooms and biomaterials can bring us. So I guess that's my first bit of learning, that projects like this can be gateways. My other bit of learning and reflection specifically is around libraries, and that something I feel acutely, I grew up in Bergen for a few years when I was younger. I come from an oil family. We followed my dad around for his work on the rigs. And Elise, when you were speaking earlier about the nature of the kitchen table, of the information that you get at the kitchen table, my kitchen table, I grew up immersed in climate change denial, and my dad, my father's experience of that, his lived experience of working on the rigs. And that's what I grew up with. That was my information diet at the kitchen table. So when you were speaking, that was setting off all kinds of things. And we need this kind of, we need to protect these civic spaces, civic spaces of democracy. I think that's what libraries are, is this almost endangered species of accessible civic spaces. That if, let's follow the logic train through what I've spoken about, if we are the most powerful generation of humans that will ever exist, if we need to think of ways to be good ancestors, then part of that is about coming together in community. Part of that is finding high quality information. Part of that is learning to play with these overwhelming ideas. That there are no better spaces for that than our libraries. So I would argue that without even necessarily doing climate centered work, having a big banner over your space saying "Come here for the climate thing," just doing high quality community library work makes you activists, incredibly important, powerful, generational activists as library professionals, and I thank you for it. So I think those are my two reflections. Be weird, and thank you for maintaining and stewarding our spaces of our civic spaces of democracy infrastructure. I'm really grateful for it. I think that's my time. Thanks, Judy.
Thank you so much, Adam. You know, Adam's quite a close neighbour, so we get to see each other at various events. And Adam is a declarer with Culture Declares Emergency, and we practice radical hope in Culture Declares Emergencies. So, yeah, the mushroom sculpt is all part of that, and your other amazing projects too. So I hope people will check out the website. So now I'm going to give the floor to Beate Hovind from the Future Library, and you will explain this for us.
Thank you for the previous presenters. I guess I'm part of the Radical Hope family as well. And I like the weirdness, appeal. So, but I will present the Future Library for you guys, but first, as an introduction to that, we will first show you a very short film.
In the forest, there is a city, and in the city, there is a library, the Future Library. The Future Library is an artwork that is going to unfold over 100 years, where each year from 2014, a writer is commissioned to write any piece, nonfiction, fiction, poetry, in any number of words, and it will not be read until 2114, when the books are printed from the pulp of the trees being grown in the forest. These trees that in time will be used to print these 100 texts. What a wild idea you had here, Katie Patterson.
When you plant trees, you're aware that it's something that's going to outlive you. And this art piece is really about an unborn generation and trying to make a place for them. Besides Margaret Atwood, for the past 10 years, you and many other international and celebrated writers agreed to participate in my wild idea. Why did you want to do this, Margaret, as the first writer of this art project?
This is a letter to the future. We assume that people will still be around, that they will be able to read, that they will still be interested in reading, that there will still be a library. We don't know how the world will be with the climate and humankind, so this is a project that is immersed in hope and a cosmic sense of time. Think of this as cultural storage for the future.
That books are trees and libraries are forests.
And that this future could be beautiful.
This was is a short film, because sometimes it's really hard to explain what Future Library is. So it's easier to show this short film, but I will go through it again. So this is Katie Patterson, and I commissioned her in 2011, so it's been many years already, to develop an art project for the transformation of the harbor in Oslo, in Norway. And she was given a very open brief, and I think that's what you have to do with artists, to give them open briefs, because that's when they come up with the strangest things. And honestly, when she proposed Future Library, I totally panicked at first because, she has the idea, I had to make it happen. And when she said it's going to last for 100 years, I was just imagining my board, and they would probably totally refuse that idea, And she said, we're going to grow a forest with 1,000 trees. And I was looking around in the harbor of Oslo, and I was thinking, where am I going to grow? Where do I get the money to buy a plot of property to plant those trees? So it really made me think it's totally impossible. But because it's a long story, but because it's what can I say? It's a coincidences of humans that thought what is possible, and a lot of other things. We have managed to run this project for 12 years. So we did get a forest that was ready to be cut. It's not an old forest, which is very important to me to say, that it's a managed forest, and it was ready to be cut. So we were given that. and we planted 1,000 new trees. And this is the first year, so it's tiny. I promise you, it's now they're taller than me. And we kind of forgot that trees will grow and the forest will look different throughout the years. And we commission an author every year, and they read a manuscript. No, they write a manuscript that will stay unpublished and unread, a secret manuscript, until 2114. So as you can see, Margaret Atwood was the first one we dared to ask, and she said yes immediately. And after that, we have a beautiful lineup with incredible authors, including Elif Shafak, for instance, Hong Kong. She got the Nobel Literature Prize 2 years ago. Ocean Vuong, Tsitsi Dangarembga, and Valeria Luiselli. And this is Karl Ove Knausgård in the forest with the mayor and the foresters and Tsitsi Dangarembga. This is Ocean Vuong, Judith Chalansky with the manuscripts in their hands. And also then, this is the new public library in Oslo. I have to say that I think this is the most incredible, generous, free public library that I've ever experienced. And on the top floor, on the 5th floor, we were given space to build this incredible room out of the forest that we cut that has this 100 lid boxes where we are putting the manuscripts in. And of course, it's only 10 there now, but there will be 100 eventually before they will all be taken out and will be printed, and the manuscript will be printed on the trees that are growing today. And this is when Margaret Atwood was coming back for another visit in the future library room in the first top floor in the library. And it's the room is publicly open constant as long as the library is open, and the library, the Deichman Public Library, is open from early morning until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. It's crowded. It's so many people in the library, and it's so popular. And of course, also the visitors are very, very many in the future library room as well. This work travels around the globe constantly. It's a tiny administration. It's mostly the artist and me. And we don't have a communication strategy or budget or people working with this constantly. It's mostly one person project. But the narrative is so strong that it travels around the globe constantly every year. Both there's already made documentaries made out of it, and also there is lots of newspapers, podcasts, and you can Google and you will find many things to listen to. And I'm often asking myself, this is a tiny, tiny forest. It's not a very big forest, but we have planted 1,000 trees. And this was the first year, so you can't really see the trees we planted. But I'm always asking myself, so why does it resonate with people from all over the world, really across borders, ethnicities, religions, languages, and political interests? And I often think that it is about basic human needs and what we are in need of now. For instance, I have to just a minute. The rituals, because the authors have to come to Norway with their manuscripts, and we gather outside the forest and we walk together to the forest. So it takes about 30 minutes. It's not a hard work, but this is what we do together. So I think this ritual itself is why it's we all need rituals, and rituals in all uncertainty makes it more hopeful. And for instance, this is one Hong Kong. The author Hong Kong was there, and she chose to do it more performative with us after. So she was dragging this white cloth through the forest, and it was really, really magical. And it's a growing crowd, but for us, it's not really to have as many people there as possible. But what they do, we sit down on the ground, and you can see now the trees are growing, and it's right there. The only artificial things that are there is a bench made out of a tree, and so this is a very basic ritual where the handover happens, and the foresters talk about the forest, and the authors are reading, and we hear some music, and finally we sit together and we just listen to nature. And it's about hope. As Margaret Atwood would say, it's a very hopeful project because it insists on there will be a future, and there will be people, there will be libraries, there will be books. And also The Guardian has written, for example, an editorial and calls it a hope in practice, which really moved me because I think this is what we need. We need to do, come together, we need to do rituals and do something optimistic. And I think this is very much aligned with what Adam and the other people said. And I'm often asked by journalists, so why are you doing this? Because you will be dead way before this is finalized. And why do you think anyone would care finalizing it? And my really only answer to that is trust. I think we have to trust the coming generations that they actually will care and fulfill these cross-generational projects. But it's mutual. I always turn it back to us, and I say, and they have to trust us that we care to finish this project. Yeah, this is a good friend of mine. He's every year he's in the forest. He's much bigger now. And it's also about time and cathedral thinking. Cathedral thinking because it's a cross-generational project. And I think it's in the future, it's not going to be about inheriting money or real estate. It's going to be about inheriting cross-generational project. And it's really about, this is two examples, that time is the issue when it comes to this, our perception of time. Yeah, I think Adam again mentioned deep time. And so our perception of time is, we are very much thinking short term, and that is probably the greatest threat. So we have to, things are urgent, but we also have to invest in long-term projects and long-term visions, because that's how we're going to repair, and that's how we have to also to secure our future. And Future Library is an example of this kind of projects. And finally, I will mention the vice mayor of Oslo that year, of culture, because for many years I didn't dare to ask. You know, we were given a forest, we were given a space for the manuscripts in the new public library, but I didn't dare ask for a contract. But after 7 years, he gave me the contract. So the municipality in Oslo, the politician, it was a political will, wanting to commit for us to have this forest and also to have the room across elections, across budgets, yearly budgets, and also across political interests. And this is for me also cathedral thinking. And what's great about art is that it's opening, it doesn't give any answers, but it opens up a lot of questions. And these are some of the themes. It's not only about climate crisis, it's about hope, it's about rituals, trust, democracy, community, and finally now and resilience. And I was in India just after Christmas, and I was presenting Future Library, since our last author is from India. And the interpretation in India was that Future Library is a slow march for peace. And of course, I never thought about that before in that way, but I think this is also because it reflects all the uncertainties and everything that is going on. And finally, it's about imagination. And I want to quote Margaret Atwood. She was interviewed about Future Library in 2015. And she said, the planet is changing. We need creativity, ambitions, and some powerful new stories to understand how we can change with it. And I honestly think that if we can imagine futures, we can also create them. So that's why imagination is so important now, that when in the perspective of resilience. And so our two next author last year was Tommy Orange, and this year is Amitav Ghosh. Tommy Orange was delayed, so he is coming to Oslo the 28th of June together with Amitav Ghosh. So the handover is there, and you're all welcome to join us. I don't mean you have to come, but if you can manage to come, that's great. Let us know. But the most important thing is that you can also watch this streamed, because we don't, wherever you are in the morning of the Sunday, 28th of June. If you follow us on social media, you can follow be there with us online at least. I'm happy to take questions, of course.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna. I had already been in the Dijkman Library and in the Future Library with Elise, who, because I'm often in Norway. And when I was having a conversation about this webinar with Adam, actually, Adam said, "What about the Future Library in Norway?" And I realized I'd been there. It was already a place I visited. Because I think if you're a library lover, you seek out libraries wherever you go. They're comforting places. You can be warm, you can be quiet, you can be calm, you can find new things. And so it was extraordinary when you and I met, and I realized, yeah, I already been in the library and in that wooden space where those documents are ready, waiting for the future generations. I knew there were some questions in the Q&A. I don't know if they've all been answered. I think you've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, Adam, because I saw some I saw questions about your process, which have already been answered. But I don't know if there's any more questions. I can't see anything else in the Q&A. But whether or not any of you panelists have questions of each other, we probably have a tiny little bit of time if you want to ask each other questions. But I also want to make sure that we give time for each of you to give a final, very short statement about climate hope. So are there anything, because you didn't know about each other? Well, you maybe knew a little bit about each other, but this has been a very it felt like a very deep dive actually into the subject today. So I don't know if anybody has a question, if anybody else. Judith. Yeah.
Thank you all of you for your presentations. It's such amazing and inspiring projects. I guess it is a question, but it's also a bit of a comment as well to you, Anna. It was really brilliant to hear how the Future Library came out of an artist commission with a very open brief. In a previous role and with a different hat, I led the Future Wales Fellowship, which was an artist development programme run by the Arts Council of Wales in partnership with Natural Resources Wales, which was about giving artists a space to do creative research for over a year on climate themes. And what was really unique about it was that it was a completely open brief. There was no expectation of output, and that's so important for artists. When you let artists just have time and space to create, that's when the really magical things happen. And I'd love to know a little bit more about, you talked about the challenges of taking that project to your board, but how did you get there in the first place, of having the willingness to have that openness in the brief, which leads to these really exciting ideas?
That's a very long story, but I have to admit that it's really about not trying to solve everything at the same time, because that's too overwhelming. People in our time is not used to thinking that long term, and so we want to do risk assessments. And if I had done was told to do a risk assessment, nothing would have happened. So it's really about not telling the truth from the very beginning, and you shouldn't say that in a way, but sometimes you have to be really smart. So for instance, I didn't ask for the contract. I didn't dare. I was terrified that what if they say no? What do I do? So that's why I waited for 6 years, and I dare to kind of ask. So that's a long story, but I think it's now that it's all happened, at least it's a proof that it is possible. It is possible. People can actually, make contracts lasting for 100 years. Even though they're politicians and stuff. So yeah, it's a long story, but there's Yeah. Yeah, but call me. I'll tell you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that, Anne, because I worked in politics, and I saw so much short-termism, policies and budget lines and headings only ever for the life of the Parliament or for the Council. And I think people are crying out for some certainty. Let's at least know that our libraries will be open for our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So Adam, did I see your hand up also or not?
I put it up and then I put it down, but it was I guess it was a similar thing that had jumped out to me, this idea that the contract, the political will comes after the storytelling and after the community work has happened. And that's something that I keep on being told by people in Whitehall and people like yourself, Julie, that how the politics works, it kind of catches up with the will that you manufacture through doing the stuff. So that, yeah, it was a thing that had popped up. I had a question around it, but I think it was answered.
Yeah. So, because I worked both in culture and then in politics, and what I saw very much was how largely politicians don't lead, they respond, and they respond to pressure, and people continuing to say the important things that need to be said. So it's that constant kind of reminder, pressure from the bottom up, more and more people coming together to say the same things, which is why things like Fridays for the Future is so important. We've only got 4 minutes left, and I think what we will do now, so I saw you put your hand up, Elise, but I want to make sure that everybody just gets to give their final little seed of hope for all of us. Maybe what would be the final takeaway to help us all feel and practice this important hope. I don't know who wants to go first. I never thought about this. So which person? Yeah, okay, Anna.
Yeah, I just want to say that really, let's stay together. Let's meet face to face and do the ritual every year, no matter what happens. I think this is creating certainty in uncertainty. So that's how I keep myself going, actually.
Okay, yeah. I put the date in my diary, by the way, so maybe
Good.
I can be there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome.
Yeah. Who else would like to just give us a final message? Adam, did I see you unmute there?
Unmute, yeah. I saw a lovely video from the writer John Green recently, and he said, to paraphrase him, he said something like, "Hope is a choice and it's a verb," and that I think we're kind of redefining a little bit what the word can mean in this moment that we're in. And I'm constantly thinking about how climate change has happened. It's happened and it continues, and we'll be, as well as continuing the work to mitigate it, will also be adapting to it for generations to come. So that discipline of hope, that kind of doing word of hope, is going to be one of our most crucial skills to nurture in ourselves and in our kids. And I think just reiterating that I can't think of better spaces to be doing that than in libraries and with the library programs. So yeah, that's my reflection.
Okay, thank you. Judith, do you have a final word of hope for us?
Yeah, so there's some very famous words by our patron saint in Wales, Saint David, Dewi Sant. He said, "Gwnewch pethau bychain," which means do the small things. And I think that's a really important message. It can, this can be such an overwhelming, the challenges that we're facing are so massive, and we're all only individuals. But I think that's the power of the small things and how they can lead on to bigger things is something that you can take hold of.
That's lovely, especially as you showed us such a big thing, the National Library from above. I'm like, what an immense project. Yeah. So yeah, let's not forget the small things. And Elise and Chace, do you have words for us?
So we wanted to actually announce just another quick thing that we're working on. And that's by, we have a goal by April 22nd, 2027, where we really are hoping that we can bring more of these reliable and trustworthy information delivered by libraries all over the world to families. And that idea of that kitchen table, right? Young people are leaders in their families and in the world. And I think that the work of libraries is doing leaps and bounds. The work of organizations like ChildPress is doing leaps and bounds to bring that information not only to family units, although that's a very important thing, and then also to the world. So keep that in mind as you're going forward. If you have kids, if you work with kids, if you work in a library, to try to push that and have those conversations at the kitchen table, at the dinner table, and really, work to uplift youth voice, both where you're at and if you have the power to do so, and a larger scale, like what's happening here. But thank you very much.
Fabulous. Thank you. Elise, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chace, again, and the whole team. And so put in your agenda 22nd of April, 26 and 27. So Chace and me will already show some examples how we think a library should be when you come in, that there is a very good budget for a person who welcomes a child, to show what kind of information there is about Mother Earth. On international, national, and local level. So we will give some examples as soon as possible on the website, and we hope all libraries in the world will follow for 22nd of April 27. So get it in your agenda.
Okay, thank you. So it only remains for me to say thank you to all of my speakers, also to Salvatore and the team at EBLIDA ELAN. First, for giving me the incredible opportunity to be part of this expert group for 4 years, I think it is, where I've been able to curate and organize this amazing webinar of libraries and hope around climate. We are part of a series of 4 webinars about libraries for planet. There is one more next week. There are other working groups within the ELAN project. They're all on the website, and some of them cross over to the things we've been talking about today, like Libraries for Democracy, for example. And we will be having a conference in Strasbourg in October, and I hope I'll send you all information about that, and people who are signed up to the ELAN e-newsletters, you'll also hear about this. Yeah, so thank you very much. I'm sitting at my kitchen table right now. I've been here the whole time. So I realize what an important place it is. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, have a great evening. Spring is here. Okay, thank you.